Alrighty, guys. So I'll get into it there. Thanks for everyone that's hitting that like button and tuning in. Tonight's episode, we're going to talk about why altcoins are lagging, what's going on with Bitcoin. Obviously, on the channel, we've been talking about the ETF a lot, and we did a bit of charting of altcoins yesterday and how a few of them are, severely lagging against Bitcoin. A few, outperformers. Today was a different scenario again. I'm going to tie it all together, tell you how I think this is going to play out, or at least have a few scenarios that we can position our accounts for, and talk about the mistakes that beginners make. Now, I wanted to start off by saying, obviously, thanks to everyone that's been tuning in and liking and commenting in all those videos. And, it's funny how quickly the sentiment changes to people telling us that Bitcoin's crashing and that we're living in denial and all that sort of thing. So you guys that are still here, absolutely love it. Hopefully you're getting in somewhere near the bottom and we're going to reap those rewards over the long run. But this is the poll I ran that I wanted to start off with, because I always try and do these for a reason, so you guys can try and pick out those hidden messages a little bit, but not necessarily a hidden message or predicting the future, but it's just things that I want to highlight that I think a lot of people maybe don't do the right thing. So in this poll here, I was trying to say, do you own Bitcoin, and get a feel for how many people don't own any Bitcoin. And one of the most popular videos we did last year was best portfolio structure, where I said, guys, personally, at the start of 2017, I was 70% Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Litecoin. Now, that other 30%, you've got to pick good altcoins, good ICOs. It's high risk, high reward. A lot of those are going to fail. We've spoken about all that. I'll touch on it again at the end. But all I wanted to highlight here was, look, there's a decent percentage of people, and look, these are people that follow me on Twitter, so they tend to be, more involved in the space. If I was to go out and do this same poll, for people that had just opened an account on Binance or CoinSpot in Australia, or the altcoin exchanges, I think this would be a lot higher in terms of people that don't own any Bitcoin, and they're the ones that on days like today, they're going to get that FOMO when their account's going down, but Bitcoin's going up. So let's have a look down here, and there's a fair bit of sideways chop in the top 100 from coins other than Bitcoin that's going up. But if we price it, in terms of Bitcoin, it's pretty clear that everything's underperforming the Bitcoin price. So let's examine what's going on. So in terms of that correction, so the market cap's declining, the bear market of the entire space is kind of the way I think about it. We needed a correction. Things got too hot in the Bitcoin market and things got far too hot in the altcoin market. So that I say sentiment is the thing I put the most weight in and what controls markets. We needed that sentiment to reach those terrible stages. You've all seen the Wall Street cheat sheet, and that obviously represents pretty similar pattern to what we've got now on Bitcoin and a lot of the altcoins as well, in terms of 6 months. A lot of people that weren't interested in anything apart from making money have left the space. We've had somewhat of a cleansing. Look, maybe we have another leg lower, nobody knows exactly, but we've certainly had that cleansing period. Okay, now this is the total market cap, and look, 100 and altcoins I'm going to talk about in a second. But look, this total market cap's sort of forming this level here that's been tested so many times at around $250 million. And now we're seeing new money into the space. So that's ticked up significantly from around that 250, quadruple bottom, if you want to call it that. We've added $40+ billion. Sorry, I might have said million there, talking in billions. Now, this same chart for excluding Bitcoin, so this is, total market cap of all altcoins, and that's the 150 billion mark here that's been tested. Again, quadruple bottom, you can call it if you want, a number of times. But this, it's had a bit of an uptick, but it's still going sideways for the most part. So what that tells us is that new money is coming in, and it's going into Bitcoin. So it's not necessarily coming out of altcoins. We haven't seen this fall off a cliff and Bitcoin go up. This is still trending sideways. So it's new money that's kind of coming into Bitcoin. And a lot of it's to do with that ETF. We're going to talk about the other factors as well. But now this is the next thing that I want to concentrate on. And guys, all these charts that I've just showed you, they are from 2017 onwards, because that's basically when things started to get a bit more dynamic and change. Before that, Bitcoin basically had a 90% plus dominance. Then we had Ethereum come into the fold, and then altcoins really sort of dominate. So this was Bitcoin last year, and this is when it really lost its dominance. A couple of reasons. So Ethereum was, all the rage and growing. Look at Ethereum's dominance here at one point, getting up to 31%. Bitcoin was having the talk about, the hard fork. Can it scale? Are all these altcoins better? A lot of that, again, if you followed our work, we didn't put a lot of weight into that. We encouraged people to have a big weighting, again, of Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Litecoin tends to follow as well. It tends to be that test bed for the Lightning Network and for SegWit. So there's lots of reasons why we were heavy in those top coins. And then Bitcoin sorted its issues out to some degree, or, the sentiment got a bit of relief as people, Bitcoin wasn't no longer going to die, and it wasn't the end of the world if we had hard fork or hard forks on Bitcoin, and a lot of people were relieved. People were scared; they didn't know how this was going to play out. So Bitcoin regained its dominance, and then obviously Bitcoin price peaked out, and this is where it gets interesting. So this was to do with the futures, the run up into the futures price. FOMO into Bitcoin, which is similar to what we're starting to see now, and similar to how I think it's going to play out in terms of smart money has got in early, and if this runs for a few more weeks, maybe you're not late per se, not getting the bottom if that's how this is going to play out. But then the smart investors will take profits, and they bought up altcoins. Now this is going to be, there's a few scenarios, and I think it's going to be different again, but you're going to have to be so picky, guys. If there's new money coming into the space and it's that institutional, it's that smart money, they're not just going to buy coin number 577, okay? Maybe everything gradually increases in price, but how many times have you heard me say that the bad coins, the average coins, are going to underperform, even Bitcoin and Ethereum? So yes, they're going to take profits, but they're going to be very selective with what coins they pick. They're probably going to want to increase their holdings of, I don't want to name names here, but, if Neo's doing well, they're going to want to buy some. If NEM's making progress, if Ethereum is scaling, I could go down that list, Cardano, all these sort of projects that the quality platforms that people are trying to build out, and so on, that's probably where we're going to see a lot of interest in it. Crypto 20 is an example of an interview I've got coming up where people are going to invest a lot of money in the top 10 or 20 projects. And again, all that pours into that outcome that I'm sort of alluding towards, that people are going to try and pick the next altcoin, the next hot thing. They're going to look down the list at these small market cap coins, and I don't think they're going to perform that well versus some of just the top 20 projects. I really think that could surprise. Now, of course, I own, 10 or 20 coins that aren't in the top 100 or whatever you want to say it as, but I'm very selective. I still think 99.9% are going to fail. So do your research, be careful, don't overcomplicate it. I think it still makes sense to own a good mix of coins in the top 10 or 20. And a lot of people further down the track, maybe they look back and say, geez, I was in crypto pretty early on in 2017 or 2018, and my portfolio didn't perform that well because I was trying to pick the next 100x instead of just saying, look, if I get into a few of these solid coins now, they're probably going to go up 10x, 20x, maybe 50x, and where else do you get those returns in the world? So that's just the first thing to be aware of. Another few of the headlines I want to run through today that I also think are moving the market. So Zero Hedge is one of my favorite websites. Cryptocurrency insurance is booming, and what that means is that we're starting to get some legitimacy around the custodians being able to insure those funds, and that's one of the things that the big money has been waiting for. You're not going to put $1 million into crypto if you've only got a few million to invest, with the fear that it could just be hacked and it's gone, it's not underwritten. So this is a huge positive. Insurance market, again, it'll heat up. It's another industry that forms around the crypto industry, just a sign that this entire space is growing and creating jobs and so on. So great to see that funds are being able to get insurance. Now, this was probably the main headline today. Now, Zero Hedge is one of the most read websites in the world. Now, I know most of you guys are aware of that, but I just wanted to throw that in. So when they put out headlines like this, it matters. So this headline here, that Bitcoin ETF is a near certainty to win approval later this year, and this comes from a couple of insiders at the SEC and CFTC. One of them here from the CFTC saying, I'd say 90% chance to be approved at this point. And again, that's a lot higher than what I personally think and what we spoke about the other day. And the source from the SEC here saying expect a positive outcome in September, and that makes sense with that time frame of pushing it back another 45 days. But we've got to remember that Jay Clayton pretty clearly came out and said we're not going to rush things. We don't want investors to get hurt. If there's a hack, this is egg on their face forever, and that's kind of my thinking. So look, it's interesting to see that if this is one of those scenarios that I said would play out, where we're getting heaps of headlines and heaps of FOMO, and then reality hits pretty hard when someone says, not quite. Now, do we get the Bitcoin ETF in the long run? Yeah, of course we do. But again, these are just how news headlines can shake out investors from day to day, and why so many people need to take a long-term point of view. This is a headline that I don't think I read anywhere, that's gone missing again, but the G20 set a deadline for having crypto regulations and sort of standard practices for those G20 countries. They wanted to have that in July at this meeting, and now they've said, look, we're going to take a hands-off approach. We're going to kick the can down the road to at least October. So again, something the market was fearing a lot at one stage was the G20 countries coming together and clamping down on crypto. Hands-off approach, that's a massive tick. Okay, that's another green light. In terms of what's going on macro, we've spoken about this before. Long-term bonds, 30-year, they're heading up over 3%, while interest rates around the world are near zero, negative rates in some countries. Fed talking about hiking rates 5 times again next year. I just don't see how that can happen. They've never been more in debt, guys. $250 trillion. They can't afford to pay 5% a year on $250 trillion is $12.5 trillion a year just in interest. Okay, that's absolutely insane. Okay, that's why the world can't survive higher interest rates. But I'm not going to talk about that in too much depth. But again, we touched on that the other day. That's why countries are dumping their US bonds, because higher interest rates are coming, or they're fearful that these bonds are going to be worthless. As interest rates spike short term, you can buy better bonds, lock in those prices, and then maybe the rubber hits the road, people get a reality check, and interest rates dive again, or QE. We launch another money printing round, or whatever that is. Look, basically, it's all good for crypto. I think anything that's an anti-dollar asset, and that leads into this next story here about gold demand still pretty strong in a lot of countries. People are turning away from the US dollar. Don't forget that all cryptos are basically, we talk about them in US dollar terms. So if that loses strength, it's good for Bitcoin as an alternative currency investment, however you want to paint it. And the often forgotten about silver. And guys, I think if we are to go into a huge bubble and everyone's to make huge money, particularly our Australian audience, there's heaps of metals dealers. The same in the US. Obviously we're friends with Ainsley Bullion, but there's plenty of others that even accept crypto now. Of course, people are going to take some profits in hard assets, particularly if the banking system's looking shaky at the time, or whatever, depending on the country you're in. People are going to want some hard assets. So don't forget about gold and silver. And if they really capitulate and make new lows, you've got to look where the sentiment is the worst. If crypto goes into a huge bubble and everyone's saying gold and silver has no future, maybe that's the time to buy. This one we touched on as well. Venezuela inflation hit 43,000% or something stupid the other day, I think, when I tweeted about it. 1,000,000% in a year. That's just something else that's going to grab headlines, and people say, oh, it'll never happen to me, but I think we are going to see that domino effect in a lot of European indebted countries. Again, it's all just good for crypto. That's what sparked Bitcoin's rally in 2013 in Cyprus on the bank runs and hyperinflation and that sort of thing. of course we can see it happen in other countries. So back to the tech and other reasons why Bitcoin might get that dominance. So yes, we're all excited about the ETF, but the Lightning node count is up above 2,000 now. The amount of Bitcoin it can hold, again, this is something that's going to cause headlines in the next few days as it passed $1 million in network capacity. It's just something that we'll look back on and say, geez, that was the early days. Just like the internet, when we went from dial-up and low broadband, all that stuff, to the Bitcoin Lightning network being able to handle billions of dollars in the future. And as long as this node count keeps rising, this can become more and more decentralized, which is what we want. We don't want a few people running nodes and it being anything like the banking system. We really want this to be as peer-to-peer as possible, with everyone opening up a channel, possibly earning those little rewards in fees and all that sort of thing. And obviously we have the importance of proof of work on the main chain to secure the network. And again, that's another reason why Bitcoin is the most important proof of work network. We've touched on it on the channel. We see so many of these other coins that are sort of running similar proof of work algorithms getting attacked with 51% attacks. Bitcoin is the strongest proof of work network in the world. It's never been hacked. Again, it comes back to why people are getting insurance. As long as you protect the private keys, have those multi-sig wallets in place, there's plenty of ways that people are now getting savvy to store Bitcoins very safely. In terms of mining centralization being an argument, again, something that's not talked about enough is, have we reached peak mining centralization? So Moore's law says that technology gets doubles every 18 months or 2 years now, depending on who you ask. But this new miner being launched by GMO has a 7 nanometer chip in it, an ASIC chip, so built to just mine the Bitcoin algorithm. We can't get much lower than this. I've heard that possibly, we can do 6 millimeter chips, but I don't really think we can go any lower than 4 or maybe even 6 without getting down to the point of, talking single atoms, and we just can't make chips that good. So have we reached that threshold where, in terms of chips getting better and doubling every 2 years, we're not going to get much better? So once these become more affordable, and they will as they're getting more and more mass produced, maybe the average man on the street, it becomes affordable, and it's no longer just these huge mining giants in certain countries that have these mining farms and have these huge pools. Mining has gone from those 3 pools that have got nearly 51%, I think. Maybe that starts to spread out and it becomes more and more low cost for the average person to become a miner and participate in this network and all those sort of things, guys. So look, everyone's got these arguments for and against, if mining's good, if it's uses too much energy, if it's too centralized versus the Lightning network. Hopefully that's not too political, that video. I've just explained that in an easy to understand way. But again, all these things go into that Bitcoin dominance, in terms of people have forgotten that banking and finance is probably the largest industry in the world. And people talk about, what is blockchain good at disrupting? Well, this is the industry. This probably is one of the best use cases of blockchain, yet everyone's out there trying to pick that next ICO that needs blockchain and so on. So don't ever forget about Bitcoin. I think I've touched on most of what I wanted to talk about tonight, guys. How long have I been going for? Not quite even 20 minutes yet. Okay, so the things that I wanted to finish on here, and let's see if we can get a Bitcoin breakout while we're live. Don't FOMO into Bitcoin. Last year we saw people flood into this space, buy altcoins, and then Bitcoin outperformed. They FOMO'd into Bitcoin at the wrong time, just when the smart people were taking profits and starting to buy up alts cheap. And then once they realized that Bitcoin started going down, they FOMO'd back into alts right at the top of the market in January. And they're the people that are probably holding, that are down 80 or 90% now. So if you're the average investor that's not a day trader, you're not chopping and changing your account, maybe that's not even the best case for you for tax purposes, chopping and changing and trading a lot. sit back and organize your account in a way that you're happy with. I think everybody that's in this space and part of this movement should own a little bit of Bitcoin. There's going to be ebbs and flows. There's going to be market cycles, but take that long-term view, guys. And if your long-term view, that prediction that I said the other day, the next thing that I think is guaranteed to happen in my mind is $1 trillion market cap. Now, to get there, the market in general is going to go up 5 to 10x a lot of the top 10 or 20 best projects. Don't try and overcomplicate things and try and every project you pick, you're trying to pick a 100x project, okay? You're part of this movement. If you're here early, if you're thinking long term, don't chop and change. You're just giving your money, that Warren Buffett quote, a device for transferring wealth from the impatient to the patient. So be happy, do your research. We've got all those videos, guys, in playlists, fundamental analysis coins that we like. Obviously, we're always trying to cover more and more of those. There's plenty out there, but just do your research, guys, and be patient, and don't feel like if every day when there's red in one coin and green in another that you've got to go and chase that, okay? Chasing is one of the worst things you can do. Looks like we're starting to break out here, guys. And the final thing that I wanted to mention was the wealth effect, which central banks talk about in terms of this premise when everyone's getting wealthy and feeling comfortable and secure about their wealth, and they go out and spend more. So, they say things like people go to the movies or people go to their favorite restaurant, then the restaurant hires another, waiter, and everyone benefits trickle down through the economy. Now, we know that trickle down economics doesn't really work, but in terms of the crypto world, the wealth effect, think about if this space grows and yes, we get the Bitcoin ETF. What about if we get an Ethereum ETF? Maybe the SEC really want to stick with currencies and we get a Litecoin ETF. Or what if we have more and more of these, Crypto 20, that interview we've got coming up, that fund where they invest in the top 10 or the top 20. All this stuff, people are going to throw more Ethereum or more Neo at a Neo ICO, whatever it is, guys, that wealth effect, and that all that can play out to leading to one of the biggest bubbles of all time. Now, I don't talk about today whether or not bubbles are good or bad, but if you think that we are going to go up in price and this space is really going to heat up, that's definitely one of the ways that I see that happening in terms of just everything going up, everyone getting euphoric, everyone throwing money at all these startups and projects. The smart institutional money coming in, funds getting in, everyone's talking that you have to have a percentage of your portfolio in Bitcoin, and then we go from there. People learn about Bitcoin and they learn down the list just like many of you have, guys. So I'll leave you on that note. The charts are all looking pretty strong. Just be mindful that I still don't think the Bitcoin ETF is that likely to get approved. So this is great that if we can benefit from all this, don't chop and change, don't go chasing. Be sensible. That long-term outlook's still really bullish. Don't let headlines shake you out in the short term. So thanks for tuning in, guys. Hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't already. Share these videos around. And thanks for tuning in, guys. Cheers.